trying to figure out if I am mentally prepared to struggle for reviews of every one of these books, because it's been a while since I've read majority of them. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are going to be starting out my end of year wrap up with all of the books I did not finish. Before I get into anything bookish, however, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments what was the first book you DNF'd this year, if you remember it. This is the first in the videos I am going to be doing to close out this year. Thankfully, since I am mostly going to be rereading for December, I could get these all filmed early. Thank God for bulk filming. Starting out with all of the books I did not finish. Now, I will say there are a few additional books that I DNF'd this year that aren't included in this, but that is because those are more considered temporary DNFs and I could see myself picking it back up later. These, however, are permanent DNFs. Chances of being picked up very slim. I DNF'd 11 books this year, and that's a decent amount of books that I didn't finish so that I could reprioritize something else I hopefully enjoyed more. These are in chronological order of when I read them throughout the year. So starting at the top was Instant Karma by Marissa Meyer. Now, this was a book I believe for the book club I do with my two best friends, and I think this actually might have been our first choice. This one was Marissa Meyer's first attempt at a contemporary. Marissa Meyer is actually more known for her fantasies, specifically like sci-fi fantasies like the Lunar Chronicles or the Renegade series. Now, I really enjoyed the Lunar Chronicles, so I was intrigued to try more of her work, and this was a new release at the time, so figured, why not? I'll read it. This is following the character of Prudence, who basically is a super hardcore overachiever, is partnered with a slacker in her biology project. They end up failing because they didn't work together, and she forces him to try and redo the project over summer break. If this was only that, possibly I could have enjoyed it more. Then I also forgot to mention, she gets a karma power and is able to enact karma on someone instantaneously. However, it doesn't work on her lazy classmate. There was just way too much going on in this book. This is a chunky book for a contemporary. I think it was over 400 pages. I was listening to the audiobook of this and I think I was 10 hours in and a new plot line just got introduced. By that point, I didn't care anymore. I officially gave up and was just like, you know, not finishing this. YA contemporaries aren't for me anymore. I've outgrown them, unfortunately. 'Twas not for me. I forgot to mention also, I read this back in January. Now that I look at this list, I'm realizing I DNF'd a lot of books in January, actually. So next is one I actually discussed recently in my series that I DNF'd video, and that is Before the Devil Breaks You by Libba Brey. This is the third book in the Diviners series, which is a 1920s paranormal mystery story following this group of people who all have different magical abilities and are referred to as diviners. Really wanted to like this series. The atmosphere of it is amazing. I will say Libba Brey really makes it feel so wonderfully whimsical in the way the 1920s does, but at the same time have this very creepy undertone the entire way through because there's a paranormal mystery going on. What the plot was doing, I was very intrigued with, but there are, God, at least like 8, maybe 10 perspectives going on, and that's just way too much for me. It is too many storylines to try and keep straight in my head. There were these weird like love triangle square things going on also, and I didn't care about any of them. Arguably biggest main character Evie drove me insane. She was finally starting to mature in this book, but unfortunately I still just did not particularly like her. Then I heard a really negative review of the fourth book, which is also really long, and I officially was just like, you know what? This series doesn't even seem like it's going to be worth it in the end, so I'm just gonna put this baby down. The next one I also DNF'd in January is one that's pretty, this is unpopular because this was a very popular book in the book club that I read it for. That was The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker, which I read for the Sugar and Spice book club. This is a contemporary romance following this girl, I don't remember what her name was. She grew up in Canada. Her father was a bush pilot in Alaska. They do not have a great relationship. Recently, he has called her mother and revealed that he is actually dying of cancer. She travels there and is trying to improve her relationship with him before he passes away, and she ends up kind of starting to fall for one of the pilots that works for her father, the grumpy to her sunshine. This was a very personal reason that I ended up DNFing the book, just because the way the storyline was going was so aggravating to me. It was very, very much infuriating. I could not stand how self-righteous the male main character was and how he just constantly was looking down on her for the relationship she had with her father when he only really knew half the story, if that. I ended up realizing this was never going to be a favorite. Honestly, I'm really glad I DNF'd it because I've also heard that apparently the guy is also sort of an ass to her about wearing makeup and trying to be feminine because, you know, you're out in the wild. Why do you need to look like that? Maybe for myself. Maybe I like looking nice sometimes. Damn, bro. Yeah, sorry. This was like a favorite for everybody else, but not for me. The last book I DNF'd in January, that was The Dark Fields by Alan Glynn. This is the book that Limitless is actually based on, the movie / I think there might have been a TV show. Basically, this man ends up finding out that there's some kind of magical pill that allows him to tap into the other 90% of his brain that we don't usually use. A bunch of shenanigans goes on about it. Ended up getting really bored. There were all these deep dives of him utilizing his brain function to basically try and become rich in the stock market. I work in the financial industry. Reading about that stuff in a fictitious book that I'm reading in my downtime, not a way for me to relax and escape the real world. On top of that, this was very kind of like sci-fi mystery, but the mystery just seemed to be getting ignored for probably the first 30% of the book I read. I don't remember how far in I got. I picked this up for a book club and then I think it completed a prompt for the Scooby-Doo readathon, which is why I went with it. Glad I put it down. It was not nearly as thrillery as I was hoping it was going to be. Okay, I have 2 in February that I DNF'd, and the first is one that's, again, a very popular book, which is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This is actually getting turned into a movie here soon. Probably won't be seeing the movie because I absolutely hated this book. This is a enemies to lovers story between these 2 people who work at a publication company. They are both essentially the assistants to the 2 CEOs. They have very different personalities and they constantly play these immature games to one another. That is why they hate each other. They start competing for a promotion and things get like a lot more serious. In terms of hate to love, I would prefer starting in like a rivals territory or a misunderstanding of why we don't like each other situation, but instead this almost felt like a bully romance. The hero was very condescending to the heroine, and there's this specific scene where she basically confesses that he has pretty much broken down her confidence, and after reading that, I was just like, how am I ever supposed to ship the 2 of them together? This man has literally gotten inside her head so much that she thinks so little of herself. Not stuff I want to be reading about in my romance. Not to mention the first kiss between them. Sorry, but like it was a little non-consensual in my eyes and I was not into that. It felt a little creepy. I can deal with being unpopular and not liking that, and I can deal with not seeing that movie. The other one I DNF'd was also a enemies to lovers. Actually, I think both of these were for that hate to love video I did in February, but the second one was Once and Future by A.R. Capetta and Cori McCarthy. I believe that is a couple who wrote this story, which is a sci-fi fantasy Arthurian retelling, and Arthur is a woman. It was an enemies to lovers between the female Arthur and Guinevere, so I was really into that. It was the only sapphic enemies to lovers I could really find that felt very up my alley for this video. I remember basically every single character constantly was just thinking about sex. It just took away from the overall story itself. Not to mention the relationship felt very underdeveloped. There's this like plot twist, I guess, that happens halfway through, which that literally shocked me so much I ripped the headphones out of my ears, sat there for a second thinking, why? How? And then there was another plot twist regarding the relationship, which honestly isn't really a plot twist if you know Arthurian legend, but in this scenario with this book, it felt so uncomfortable and really weird. At that, I just gave up. I didn't care anymore. The characters were not that deep to me. I will say the one thing that's great about this is there's fantastic LGBT rep going throughout. Wow, okay, next, I didn't really DNF a book until May. That was The Power by Naomi Alderman, which I think I read as a part of the Star Wars readathon. This one was a sci-fi story in which women randomly one day get the ability to produce electricity from their bodies, and it starts spreading across the world. I went into this expecting it to have a great commentary on rape culture as well as feminism, which I think it did, but what it was building towards wasn't exactly what I was expecting. Not to mention that the way the story is told is a little confusing. It feels like a book within a book within a book kind of sort of. Not to mention, there were many different perspectives going throughout different women who were either getting this power or someone around them was getting the power and reacting to it. I don't know if it was the writing, if it was the setup of the story, if it was the alternating situations, if it was the plot itself. I'm not sure. Just this story did not win me over, unfortunately. These next two I'm just going to go over together, but that is the Hot and Hammered series by Tessa Bailey. The first book was Fix Her Up, and the second was Love Her or Lose Her. I DNF'd both of these in May. No, I DNF'd Fix Her Up in May and Love Her or Lose Her in June. I don't know why I can't remember that title name. Both of the heroes in each of these books are incredibly strong, silent type alpha males, and honestly, it drove me crazy being in their perspectives and watching these women try to either fall in love with them or save their relationship with them, because honestly, I thought both of the men were incredibly aggravating, not to mention just emotionally immature and stifled. I'm so happy for anyone else who loves Tessa Bailey's work, but these two have ensured I probably will not pick up another book from her. Last one I also mentioned in my series to DNF was Reaper at the Gates by Tahir. This was the third book in the Ember in the Ashes series. Honestly, I just think the fantasy setup of this wasn't ticking the boxes I was interested in. I went into this very interested in the magic system. This third book, I was really hoping we would start to get more of that built up, particularly after a certain plot that takes place in the second one with Elias. Unfortunately, it wasn't getting near the amount of attention I was hoping for. The romance love triangle was taking over, and the underlying plot had started to bore me at that point. 'Tis a shame. Finally, the last one is The Maidens by michaelides, and I DNF'd this one in my Killer Professors video. That is because I could not stand this main character at all. She drove me insane. Oh my god, I wanted to be out of her head desperately. I probably could have pushed through because I think I had about 40 pages left. After a certain scenario happened, I was just too angry and DNF'd it a little prematurely, and I'm sticking to that decision. I ended up reading other reviews to find out what the ending is, and honestly, I feel like I'm really glad I DNF'd this because that ending sounds terrible. This story is following a woman whose niece's best friend was recently murdered, and she decides to go to the niece's college to try to investigate. What ends up ensuing is a lot of odd paranoia over our main character's husband, who is already dead for like the past year, and really terrible investigative work. I'm sad that I DNF'd this, given that I actually bought it from Book of the Month. We DNF here because DNFing is self-care. Alright guys, so that is it for today. Sorry if I did not finish any of these books and you absolutely loved them. As I said, chances of me continuing with them, very low. But if you want to try and convince me, go ahead in the comments down below. I'll see, maybe we'll find out. As always, thank you so much for coming to my channel today, guys. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I have my Goodreads, Storygraph, Instagram, and Tumblr linked in the description if you are interested in following what I am reading. I also come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!